of us nurses that work in
Sorry,
different
got to
surgeries.
record.
And there's little things that we all like. We all like our own things in our own sort of order. And when the nurse hasn't done it, because if you're not in there the next day, it's polite to leave it how the next nurse is going to have it. And you sort of take it personally. You think they've done it to annoy you. But I've sort of realised that they haven't done it to annoy me. They've just forgotten to do it, or they were busy or something. So not everything's done to aimed at you, if you see what I mean. Whereas normally I would think, oh, she knows I like it that way. She's done that to piss me off. But now I realise she hasn't done it to annoy me. It's just been, there could have been an infinite amount of reasons it wasn't done. And not take it so personally.
That's massive.
Yeah, that is massive. I mean, so what was the implication of that you noticed that? I mean, what, if that makes sense?
I don't know, I suppose I just started realising, just don't get so. I kind of find, I know I do it. I go in and I kind of look for things that haven't been done so that I can get annoyed about them, if that makes sense. But I wasn't aware that I was doing it until now. Then I realised, like, what's the big issue? I go in on a Monday, and why am I almost disappointed if there isn't something that I can say that's not been done? But I didn't realise that's what I was doing. And now I'm like, now I notice it. So I've picked myself up on it when I'm looking. I think, what's the big issue? If it wasn't done, just do it now. Why make not a big drama out of it, but why be angry about it all day? Just so.
You told that with husbands.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet.
No, me neither.
And I think that comes down to that thing of I told myself. I love that one. That one stuck with me for ages because I told myself that I was going to come into work and it was all going to be done. And I didn't tell anyone else that, so I shouldn't really be disappointed when it's not happened because people aren't mind readers. And I do it all the time with Mick. I tell myself that I'm going to come in and the ironing's going to be done and it's not. And then I get angry. So I've kind of noticed those things more, and I've stopped myself, as in I've gone, oh, don't go down that trail of thought. So that's been quite
brilliant.
Nice thing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of, you catch it. It's something, it's like,
yeah.
You know, you catch it and you go, ooh, you know, and then it changes. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the no, go ahead.
Sorry, go.
No, I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned the I told myself bit. I'd forgotten about that, but that's brilliant, isn't it? Because basically, I tell myself that my husband is a carbon copy of me, and so therefore he'll be able to do exactly everything exactly the way I think he's going to do it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't hold the phone. But yeah, exactly. And then I ask myself also, what do I think I'm going to gain from allowing myself to get wound up over it? Is it going to change the situation? Is there going to be a better outcome? Or am I, and if there's not, why am I wasting my energy on it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to look at you know, how that's serving you, you know, that's kind of where it's come from. What benefit are you getting from it, from this kind of it's kind of possessive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
I do it the horses
controlling.
As well. Yeah. For certain days of the week, my mum has to go and feed the horses because I finished late, and I know she won't do it the way I like it, and I know she'll do it. Her logic to me is just I can't stand it. It's alien. There is no logic there. But then I get wound up and I end up going and checking after she's been. So I finish work and I get back into town at like 9 o'clock, and I'm up the field at 10 o'clock to check what she hasn't put back right in the right places, or what she hasn't done. And then I think, what am I gaining from that? I go up there, I know it's not going to be how I expect it to be. I'm going to get angry about it, and then I'm going to be all night going, she didn't do this right. And then I think, but there's a flip side to that. She might think I do it wrong. So am I right? Or is she... No, she's got her own way of doing it, so I should just let her get on with it and just clean the mess up.
Funnily enough, I had it pretty much exactly the same situation this week, because I don't know if you know, I think you guys know, I've got this little part-time job where I drive this little van around delivering sweeties.
Ooh.
And the guy who owns the business has hired somebody else who works different days to me, and we haven't met. She lives in Devizes. I know her name, and I've spoken to her briefly. I think I've spoken to her on the phone, and we've messaged a couple of times, but we haven't met. I know she's tiny because I have to move the seat every time I get in the van. And what's interesting about that is that kind of annoys me.
I knew you were going to say about the seat.
You know, because I'm like, and then I just tell myself off, actually, because I'm like, honestly, but the way the whole job is a bit crazy, and the way the van is set up is not how I would do it. But I've just had to kind of suck it up and, you know, just do the job, and that's it. But I worked on Tuesday and she worked on Monday, and when I opened the back of the van door, I was just like, what the, you know, because there was just so much stuff in there, and the way she put it in, and I was just like, you know, it just, so anyway, I had to sort it all out, so that, because I couldn't get to anything I needed, so I sorted it all out, and I was really huffing and puffing, you know, and then I caught myself and I was still huffing and puffing a bit, but I kind of went, oh, what are you doing? And anyway, I got in the van, and I sat in the van, and, you know, what was going through my head was, I just don't get why she does this and why she does that and why she does the other, you know, it's just ridiculous. And why couldn't she leave it how I want it? Because she knows I'm driving today and blah, you know, and I had to do all this clearing up, and it took me half an hour, and I was, argh. Anyway, and then I saw something on the dashboard, and she'd done something really brilliant. She'd done a little inventory of the little toys that we also have to put in the machines. And I looked at this list, and I flipped completely. It was like an arrow to my heart, actually, because I kind of went, oh, that's really good, you know. and all my grumpiness and annoyed and irritation kind of just dissolved. And it was just such a kind of example or experience of how, you know, your feelings come from your thoughts. Because as soon as I saw something that I thought was brilliant, I mean, I'm still attributing it to something outside, but it just changed everything, you know. And I kind of just melted and thought, oh, she's trying really hard, and actually she's okay, and she can't help being a short ass. And then I went off and carried on, you know. But I think it's interesting, you know, when we go into this conversation a bit kind of deeper, particularly iHeart have a really useful tool, which is it's a picture of an iceberg, and it's basically a tool to kind of an exercise or activity to kind of look at where these thoughts and feelings are really, what they're really, you know, what beliefs that you really have, you know, where they're coming from. Because if you think of an iceberg, you know, most of it is below the surface, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how much in percentage, but generally speaking, the bit above the waterline is quite small. And when we start looking at these sort of conditions or rules that we make up about what we need or what we think we need in order to be okay, there's normally the bit above the waterline, which is kind of to do, it's literally the tip of the iceberg, you know, because when you start digging and poking holes and looking a bit deeper, and we talk about going below the waterline, you start to get a better understanding of where these attachments come from. You know, these sort of these ideas about who we are, the labels we put on ourselves, and the rules we, you know, the rules we live by. And it's really interesting because I've found personally that when I've actually done the exercise myself, you know, on myself about something, that most of our attachments and conditions come down, they're very common, you know, they're sort of, I kind of see them as part of the human condition, and they come under, they eventually sort of drop down into headings that, you know, we're all struggling with. You know, people respecting us, or, you know, looking to connect with people, or, you know, even getting things right. People, you know, you want to be seen to be right about something. Nearly always is to do with, you want to be right because you want to be respected, because you want to, you know, be connected with people. I expect you've done it a bit, have you, Katie, with the iceberg? Or
I haven't done the inquiry as much, but I agree with what you're saying, and also I think I like that bit in I Heart that I believe is so true, where we've just adopted these beliefs, hook, line, and sinker, from the environment around us, from society, from our family. You know, our family have these beliefs, and we just pick up these beliefs and we carry on, and we never question these beliefs. We never question the truth of anything. And so more recently, again, I have been remembering and seeing that effectively we are like puppets on a string to our unseen, unnoticed, unconscious, conditioned beliefs. You know, the belief people should behave the way I want them to behave, i.e. they should prepare the dental surgery or the seat in the van the way I want them to. And people should know what I want and need, and people should behave according to what I want and need, and all of that. And you can kind of completely see how children are molded and conditioned, because I know we've mentioned school early on. You know, school really molds and conditions you, and like that's the only way there is to be. And you know, you're praised and rewarded if you do it this way, and you're punished or rejected if you do it that way. And nobody likes the feeling of rejection, and nobody knows that the rejection is coming from their minds. And so we all scurry around, you know, either trying to do the right thing and be good and get it right, or giving a monkeys and being rebellious and not giving a shit what anyone thinks about us. And then we sort of carry on there with that kind of basically one of two sort of trajectories. You know, then if we want to get it right, we become hypersensitive and hyper, you know, controlling and making a lot of effort to kind of manipulate everything, so that this egocentric nature of our life means I can control all. Someone else said, I don't know if you said it, Sharon, you did say it, didn't you, on the video, about we can get all our ducks in a row. You know, that's often me. It's like, oh, if I can just get all the ducks in a row, then I'll be happy. Life will go well.
Yeah.
Or if we go the other way into kind of anger and projecting, we just smash the ducks to pieces, and you know, don't care what anybody thinks. And we know people like that as well, don't we? And
yeah, Yeah.
And until we start to become aware that our own feelings and our own behavior is not coming from the outside, that it's coming from within us, and it's coming from unconscious beliefs and attachments and rules that we hold. We are puppets on a string. And as we start to become aware, oh, wait a minute, this is what's going on in my head. This is my thinking that this person should do this, that gives you a place to just pause and kind of go, well, does it have to be like that? And, you know, I love what you're saying, Joe, about like, you know, well, do I have to react this way? And how does it serve me if I do? And I kind of wanted to ask you, you know, about the feeling of it, because that's definitely a clue. That's definitely what I've seen as a clue for me. If you feel tense and uptight, it's the Sharon's version is the rear bumper
The bleeper
alarm, isn't it?
Yeah,
the bleeper. That's like if you're sort of stomping around, either metaphorically in your head or literally stomping around, that feeling of tension is a beep 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 beep, as you know, in Sharon's words. And if I was curious to know if when you kind of let go of that a bit and thought, oh, you know, well, there's 101 reasons why this person who left on Friday didn't put all the things in place for me on Monday, what that felt like when you had that thought instead of the thought of, she knows how I want it to be, she should have done it my way.
I think there's a
if you experience a different feeling that came with that.
I did, but I also experienced a conflict with it, because part of me was, that's fine, just put it the way you want it and get on with life and don't make a deal out of it. But the other part was thinking, you've now taken up I've now had to do extra work to put this right. So you've actually you're sort of causing me more work, if that makes sense.
Like Sharon in the van.
Yeah, and then conflicting thinking, if I allow it to happen, where does it stop? Do they start doing less things because you don't mention it? It's like a snowball effect, because you don't want to be someone that you let people walk all over you, and you don't want to be somebody that you say, look, this isn't right. Do you know what I mean?
That's what's really interesting for me about understanding that wisdom comes from within, because sometimes it's individual to each individual person in that moment, right? So sometimes on some Mondays you're kind of going to go, do you know what, it's fine, I can let it go. And on some Mondays you might think, actually it's fine, I'll just give her a reminder, but where you'll be coming from is not a kind of, bloody hell, why didn't you put the things in place that you wanted me to? You'll just be coming from a place of, you know, it would just be really helpful if you could, you know, I noticed these, whatever it is, we talked about it before, and the words will come out from the space which you're inhabiting.
Yes, yeah, rather than be a bit snarky about it, a bit like, oh, I've got to do all this because you didn't bother. It's sort of
and so it's for me, it's not about believing that you might be a victim of someone else's behavior. It's about sort of standing in that space which says, the boundary is a movable feast, and sometimes for me the boundary is going to be, hey, hang on a minute, that doesn't work for me. And sometimes it's going to be, do you know what, it's all right. Whereas if we make things really set in stone, it's like, well, I'm always going to have to tell this person this isn't okay every time they don't do it the way I like it. You know, then we end up in kind of tension again.
Yeah, but the biggest conflict is in your head is, I would never do that to someone else. So, but again, that's me.
You don't know that though, do you?
Well, no, but I would stay late behind work to make sure that I didn't leave it in that state, if you see what I mean. It wouldn't occur to me to go home unless it was finished. So
that's your conditioning. You see, because it's the same with husbands. It's like, it would never occur to me to leave shit all over the kitchen for someone else to clean up in the morning, but it clearly occurs to him. Like, it's like, and that's what I love about separate realities. It's almost like you can't argue with someone else's separate reality. It's not, like you say, it's not that they're necessarily doing it on purpose. It's just that they're not aware, right? So the good thing about knowing that it's coming from you is that space of, you can choose to kind of highlight for them. It would just be really great if you could. And then you've spoken your truth.
Yeah.
And made it
Oh, no,
clear to someone else.
I've been more aware of the fact that just because I wouldn't do it doesn't mean that someone else is necessarily doing it to be mean, if you see what I mean. Whereas before I'd have thought, God, I would never do that to someone unless I was trying to be a dick, basically. So they must be trying to be a dick to have been doing it. But now I realise that it didn't even occur to them that it's annoying.
And then I really feel like, you know, because I can get into massive holier than thou sort of space, but I'm thinking, how do I know that I haven't done tons of things that really wind someone else up, that
Yeah,
someone else
exactly.
has never actually said to me? Might well be thinking, well, I bloody never do that. And I feel very fortunate that my children are pretty good at calling me on the stuff that I do that winds them up, you know, so that's great. But other, like, you know, we just don't know what other people are actually thinking about what we do and don't do we? They tell us, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I have a little saying now that comes into my head, that when I realize, and it can be about with anybody that I'm with, when I suddenly have that light bulb moment of remembering this, you know, the separate realities, which we haven't really gone into in great detail, but when I realize that, you know, they're in their own reality, I have this little, it's a little phrase that pops into my head, and I go, oh shit, it's not even on their radar.
Yeah.
You know, and I literally, my brother was in the Navy and he was a radar operator, you know, and you know, I don't know what they look like now, but in the old days it was a screen, and if something came up it would go bleep bleep bleep, you know, another bleep. I like bleeps. But I have this picture in my mind of like two radar screens, mine and whoever I'm with, and there's something on my screen, but it's not on their screen, you know. It's because they're in a different world, really. And if it's not on their screen, they can't see it or hear it or feel it or notice it. There's a somewhere,
I love that
Bransky talks about it.
For me, separate realities is massive, because for me it really highlighted that everybody does not operate according to the way I see the world, right? And up until that point, I genuinely believed everybody saw things the way I saw things, and therefore if for some reason they didn't behave accordingly, they were doing it in some way to have an impact, a negative impact on me. And it was like, oh God, everybody sees things through their own eyes. Nobody ever sees anything the same as anyone else, and we can never know how somebody else sees something unless they tell us or unless we ask. And I mean, it really dropped home for me being in a family with 4 people, because it's like, crikey, no wonder everything's so hard in the family, because there are 4 people with 4 individual separate wants, needs, desires, wishes, thoughts, you know.
Condition. Yeah, completely. It is, and it's much more, it's so much more than just a different kind of opinion or a different, I don't think even saying a different perspective is, I don't think that word is deep enough, that perspective, you know. I think because it's like, you know, we're all running our own movie. Excuse me. Completely of life. And and even oh goodness, even, you know, even when you're you know in the same space as somebody doing the same activity, you know, like us now, actually, you know, none of us, the 4 of us here, are having a completely different experience of this moment in every, you know, and this moment and this moment and this moment. And yeah, and when you kind of go, oh my God, because it's like, you know, I'm talking at the moment, so I might assume that you're listening, but I have you've got thoughts popping into your head while you're listening or not listening, and it's constant, isn't it? It's like a constant stream of thought coming through your head all the time. I don't know what I'm going to say in the next moment, and I have no idea what I'm going to think. And when you really see that that's going on for everybody, I think it's a miracle that we managed to understand each other at all.
I was going to say, it makes you feel, I think it has the potential, which I think you sort of demonstrated, Joe, of making you feel a bit softer towards people for their human foibles. I mean, that whole iHeart sort of world of well-being activity came out of me starting to have conversations with my daughter. When you said we're all running our own movie, that reminded me that the conversation started along the lines of, you're the director of your movie and I'm the director of my movie, and my movie says that you are an actress in my movie. You should be following it. And the script says that, daughter will do X, Y, and Z. And then you don't follow my script, but I'm the director, and I'm kind of going, what? But
the thing is, you're
director of your movie, actress in your movie, and you're getting upset with me. I don't follow your script.
But the
and
thing
that's
is,
just when we get into this.
We've written the script. We are the characters. It's not just that we're even just the director. We're all of it. And we write our thoughts, write the script. Our thoughts. I mean, we've all got thoughts and ideas about each other that we've made up.
And ourselves.
I was just coming to that. And then, even more important, we've got this image, this self-image of who we think we are, who I think I am. I did say that this 6 weeks is just an introduction, because this can take you on a journey of exploration that is just, it's a bit mind-boggling sometimes. And I was on a webinar yesterday where I was like, okay, stop the carousel. I have to get off, because when you really look at this, you just see how how everything is just made up. Everything is made of thought, including ourselves, in fact, and actually we don't even exist, really. That the self, it's kind of like, what? But it's almost like, I mean, going back to the movie and the whole, sometimes I think it's like having a back room that you can get into. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like your life is playing out. This movie that your experience of life is playing out, and you start to see that, but then you also see that you can get into the back room and be an observer almost of the whole thing. And there's something about that for me that has made everything less serious, I think is a good word. That's all I can come up with. I mean,
I like that description. It just makes me think, how sometimes Christmas in families can be really intense, and I can imagine all this raucousness kind of going on in a front room. And if you're just feeling a bit overwhelmed, you just want to withdraw into a sort of quieter sort of room somewhere, and kind of it's all going on a little bit further away.
Yeah, and I'm finding that more and more, like there's little things happening all the time, where I can kind of see myself before this getting really, you know, stressed out and annoyed by things, which I'm now kind of going, okay, it doesn't matter. You know, and it's not that nothing matters. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, things that would have wound me up and stressed, you know, just don't. I sometimes almost go there, and it's like you said, Joe, I kind of catch it and I go, huh. I'll give you an example. Well, there's a couple actually, but this evening I've been really busy all week. Jim's been away and he's just come home, and he's well, I agreed too. So we've invited our neighbours to come around for a drink tomorrow. And when we did it, I was like, oh, I wish it was next week, really, because I've just had so much on. But anyway, so they're coming. And Jim bought the Christmas decorations down out of the loft this morning before he went to work. And I've been out in devices all day and opticians, and I've had a hospital appointment and stuff. So I haven't had a chance, you know, and so they're sat in the box. And the Christmas tree, it's just sat there in the box. And I kind of looked at him and I said, I'm not going to have time, you know, to get the tree out and do all that before tomorrow. And he's like, oh, you said you would, you know. And I was like, no, I didn't. I said, you know, we said we'd do it. And kind of, anyway, there's potential for oh, we're not going to get it done. And you said you'd do it. And you said, you know, and all this sort of thing. And I just went, and I just kind of saw it coming. You know, it's like a train coming towards me, a potential runaway train that could, you know. And I just kind of went, oh, well, never mind. You know, if we get them done, we get them done. If we don't, we'll just push the box behind the settee. You know, and that was it. And it's just kind of, now a few years ago, I would have got really upset about that. I'd be like, oh my God, we've got the people coming, and, you know, we've got to have the decks up, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do the other, and I've got to go to work tomorrow, and blah, 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 you know. And it would have been, oh, I don't want them to come. And then we'd have had a row about, you know, when they were coming or not coming. And I just see it, and I'm like, oh, it really doesn't matter, you know. They don't care if they're just coming for a drink. So I don't even think that. I'm trying to explain it. So I'm adding things, because I didn't even think that. I just stopped thinking about it. That's the difference. So what I'm adding things now to try and explain it, but the truth is I just kind of let it go. You know, it's like, oh, okay, and carried on. And that's so less serious and kind of just freeing, isn't it? It's, you know, you're not caught up in all this stuff.
We have a space from which to choose what you do or don't do. Like, for some reason, I'm finding this week, and I don't know if it's because I've had a bit more help recently, you know, through this kind of, I've been doing a bit of coaching, but things have just fallen off my mind. And
that's it, fallen off.
And it's just like things that, you know, in a couple of weeks ago looked like critical or really important, or I was a bad person if they didn't get done. And now I just feel much more like, oh, well, whatever, you know, they'll get done if they get done. And if they don't get done, they won't get done. Like, I was thinking to myself earlier, like, it's so cold and I'm so cold and our house is so cold. And I always have this thing around Christmas, like I don't have high standards anyway, but it's like, I like to kind of get the house a little bit tidy. And because when I grew up, Christmas seemed to be this time where there was this massive build up and preparation. And then on the day, everything kind of was all in place, you know, and there was a bit of a clean up before Christmas, and you know, have showers and wash hair and clean pajamas. So it was like Christmas was,
yeah, absolutely,
the run up to it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the shit state of my house and kind of going, right, do you know what? it doesn't really matter, does it? For God's sake, whose standards is it? I don't think the kids really care that much. We might well be ending up eating Christmas dinner on our knees in front of the telly, whereas, because our eating habits at the table have just gone by the by, because I'm not sure I can find a warm room and warm. And it's like, who says that you have to eat your Christmas dinner at the table? It's
I
like,
know.
I can let go of that rule if it works,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and it does weigh you down, doesn't it? All of
Yeah.
it.
Because it's a huge amount of pressure that you put on yourself to do things in a certain way for a certain reason, until you realize that nobody says that you have to do anything in a certain way for a certain reason, even if it might mean that, I haven't got this challenge yet, but I could imagine there could be the challenge that it might mean that you might potentially end up upsetting someone else. One of the benefits of doing this learning for me has helped me to understand that if my experience is coming from my thinking, then everyone else's experience is coming from their thinking. So even if I were to say, for example, oh, I'm really sorry we can't come for Christmas after all, where in the past I'd have thought, oh God, I can't say that to that person because that's going to really upset them. Now I think, it's a shame if they're upset, but if they're upset, it's not me doing it to them. It's so there's a bit more space to kind of not go nuts to try to please people to quite the same extent.
And also, I think there's an assumption there that that's what, you make up what you think they're going to, they might be thinking, oh, thank Christ for that.
If your neighbors suddenly said, we can't come tomorrow.
And there's so many times, when you've arranged something and everyone's, so you don't say we've all arranged to meet up, and I don't know that you're thinking I really am too busy for this, and I'm thinking the same, and you are as well, Katie, and but no one wants to voice it. So we all attend and we're all thinking, Jesus, I've got so much other stuff to be done. I really don't have time for this. And if one of us had just said that, everyone else would go, oh, I'm glad you said it, because I'm thinking, but we're so worried about upsetting each other that we end up doing things that we really don't want to do or don't have time to do, because you think, oh, I've committed to it, I don't want to let everyone down. But actually they're just thinking exactly the same as you.
Yeah. So there's kind of two aspects, isn't there? First of all, you're making up what you think they're gonna think.
Yes.
And secondly, you're taking responsibility for their feelings, which have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And
it reminds me of that.
Have you seen, I've got that, have you seen that slide? I don't think it's probably an iHeart one that I've got, but not from iHeart. I have secret sources. Let me just see if I can find it. I don't know if I've showed it to you before, but it's one of my favorite. Hang on.
I was going to say, it reminds me of that thing that Sid Banks said about, don't, like, when you don't care.
Here we
kind
go.
of living from a don't care sort of place. And it's not that you don't care as in you don't love and you're not compassionate, but you just are not so strung up about stuff.
Have you seen that picture before? You must have seen it.
No.
I got it from Christine.
Oh, she has access to lots of secret things.
Yeah.
Can you make it a little bit bigger? I don't. Well, hang on. Maybe I can. I'll change my view. No, I'll change my view.
Hang on. Oh, that's too big. Hang on.
Not for me, it's not.
I don't know how to get rid of this.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good.
There we go. There we go. So, yeah, this poor little guy, look. And every time we overlook the true source of our well-being. So when we forget that we're okay. Part 3, my favorite bit, when we really realize that nobody can make us feel a certain way, good or bad, or positive, or whatever you want to call it, and you think someone can give it to you or take it away. And I love all the little thoughts in here, I mean, I don't know what's happened to this guy, but it's just, it's just how it goes, isn't it? You know, how could this happen? If only I had something. What if they don't like me? How dare she or he? How will I ever? I should. And he just looks so completely weighed down.
One of my early kind of insights was realizing that I always ran a commentary in my head going, what if this, what if that? Which, given that your course is about sort of lessen your stress, I think what if thinking generates a whole load of stress, because you can actually just sit there and kind of imagine every future difficult, problematic scenario. And you can really wind yourself up with that in a nanosecond or longer.
Yeah, and that's
so I used to call it my what if thinking. Oh, I'm doing that what if thinking again, and doesn't really help, does it?
No, and I mean, I think the way our mind works, our computer, our personal mind, just it goes in and it comes up with all these comparisons and says, yeah, of course you mustn't do that because last time you did that happened and this happened, and so it kind of I have it kind of I know computers, but like the old filing cabinet where you go through all the files. Well, I kind of imagine my brain going through the files going, hang on a minute, I can find something just to match that. And it's like, it's
from when I was 5.5.
Yeah. So it finds something that will confirm what it's, and it's like, yeah, absolutely. Blah, blah, blah. And so you so you think, well, it's not even conscious. It's just how it works. And I guess in a way there's a kind of a survival element to that as well, because it stops you putting your hand in the fire again to a certain extent. So there's kind of that side of it, but it's too good, it's too good at its job. It comes up, and because we don't understand that, we believe it.
It's so good at keeping it safe that in the end it puts us in a tiny little box, really, really safe.
Yeah, it's like a
not
really
engaging in life.
overprotective parent or something who's like, oh, you can't do that because what if this? And then of course, and then we also we think we know what's in the future, don't we, based on what's happened in the past. And of course, to a certain extent, because of the sorts of lives we live, we're not hunter-gatherers anymore. We haven't got to go out and shoot wrestle a saber-toothed tiger to the ground or anything anymore. So we kind of know our routine and what's likely to happen tomorrow or whenever in the future. So, but the bit we're missing that makes all the difference, which is why the future, when people say the future doesn't exist, I never used to understand that. I was like, what do you, but the reason it doesn't exist is because we don't know what we're going to be thinking in the moment, in the future. So even if we know that we're going to go to work or we're going to get in the car, or the routine of things, we still don't know how it's going to play out because we have no idea what our thinking is going to be in the moment. And we don't even really know that. We don't acknowledge that. Nobody had pointed that out to me before. So I was kind of scared of, okay, I'm going to try and put this in. So I used to be scared of my imagined future. Because, things do come along in your life and kind of, a bit curveballs, don't they? Things come out and knock you sideways. Things happen, good things, bad things, whatever. And it's not very pleasant, especially if it's a bad thing. So when you start imagining bad things happening, I don't know, you really like someone dying or something, or, you know, losing all your money or anything. If you've had that experience in your past and your computer brain is bringing it up, then it's really easy to get stuck in that what if, isn't it?
Mm.
Because you've had experience of things coming and surprising you, you know. So your mind's just trying to protect you.
Mm.
But when you start to realize that everything is uncertain, like everything, you don't know anything about the future because your experience of life is happening moment by moment by moment, brought to life, you know, through your thinking, through this thought, this power of thought and your senses. It's impossible to know what you're going to be thinking about anything. Even if a similar event comes up out of the blue that's happened in the past, you still don't know what you're going to think about it. Does that make sense? Or have I completely...
No, it's the anticipation of how. So, you know, I had all those problems with April. And then I would anticipate, if she did this, this is how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And it would be different each time. But I sort of protected myself too much. I couldn't even go near her in the end because of all the what ifs. And I thought this could happen. And what if that happens? And what if she does this? And she would never do any of it. But I became so obsessed about what could happen that I couldn't actually live in actually what is happening moment. Because the what ifs overtook everything else, and it was the anticipation of it that was more scary than actually she did kick
and
off.
That's a perfect explanation, Joe, of kind of how we're not living in reality. We're living in imagined reality, and we're spending so much of our life living in imagined reality that we completely miss the actual reality and the opportunities in the actual reality.
Exactly. So say on a normal day, I'd think, right, today I'm going to go up and ride. Even on the way in the car to go and see her, I'd be thinking, oh God, this is, you know, she's gonna buck me off and I'm gonna get hurt, and I'll be on my own. If I got my phone, I have to ring someone. And I would turn up and I'd be so anxious. And then she wouldn't do any of all that, but I wouldn't have appreciated that she didn't do any of that because I was still obsessing with the fact that at any moment now she could do it. So I completely missed all the great stuff that happened because I was so worried about the next 10 seconds. My mind was always sort of 10 seconds ahead of what was actually going on. And I didn't live what was actually going on. So you come away still feeling, okay, I didn't come off, but I could have. And I didn't appreciate the fact that I didn't. So yeah, you kind of, even without the bad events happening, I still lived it as if they did. Which is, the added saying it out loud sounds absolutely stupid.
But the added element to that is that, of course, when you're with an animal or another person or anybody else, you know, another living being, that energy is coming off you. That stressful, anxious energy is coming off you. And your horse, you know, will respond accordingly to I mean, it doesn't, horses, I'm fairly sure, don't have names for the sorts of things that you know, the energies. I don't think they see you coming and go, oh shit, she's anxious this morning, or oh shit, she's angry. You know, they just feel.
Yeah, they feel
what people call it, the vibration of that energy, and it either, you know, and it
but we all feel it the same, don't we?
And not just your horse, but you know, it's like you said in your lovely testimonial, which I haven't shared all of it yet because I cut it into little bits, about people noticing at work.
Yeah, but it's weird because someone else was to tell me that exact same thing there, I would go, That's just stupid. It's just ridiculous. Even to me saying it sounded ridiculous. But at the time, I can't shake that that thing. I can't shake how it's making me feel. But if somebody else was to tell me that that's how they deal with their daily lives, I just wouldn't have time of day for them, because I think it's just stupid. It doesn't even sound reasonable when you're saying it out loud. But you get so consumed by the what ifs that you really can't see the what actually.
Yeah, and also it's
you're playing, your movie is your reality. You know, it's not, it is your life, it is real to you.
Yeah. It's innocent is what I was going to say. You can't actually willpower your way out of it, because it looks real. You just don't see, none of us do see in the moment when we're caught up in that movie. We don't see that there's a completely lot of other different ways that the movie could be playing out. It's like if the script writer wrote 10 different versions of the same movie, and we are fixating on one version, and it's not a very pleasant version, but we're innocently stuck in it, and we get to kind of live the experience of that version of the script until we recognize that it doesn't have to be that way.
And the recognizing,
and I don't know about you, Sharon, but my journey has kind of been that there's all these scripts about all these things, and sort of some of those scripts have kind of opened up a bit, and it's like, oh no, it doesn't have to be that way. And some of the scripts are still doggedly kind of like, no, it does have to be that way, that's the way it is, and I can't see past it at the moment.
But I think just the knowledge that you now have, and the fact that you're it's the noticing of all this is what pokes up. It's like the iceberg. The noticing starts to melt the ice. Okay, it just does.
Because you couldn't have noticed that, Joe, about that experience with April when you were having that experience of April, could you?
No.
But now you can.
Not now, I do. Yeah, it's like if you go back to the basics of like things, you always know if you plan a night out, for example, and we've always known this, but we still don't. It never. I don't know how to explain it. If you plan a night out, it's never as fun as you imagined it was going to be. So if I met with my friends and I said, next week we're all going here, all week in your head you've got these ideas of how it's going to go, and when you actually go all meet up and go out, it never lives up to your expectations, and you're slightly disappointed because it wasn't what you imagined or what you told yourself. But if you were all just there one day and you said, right, let's all go out now, you'd have the best time because you've had no time to imagine it. You've had no time to think of how it's going to play out. You kind of live in that moment with no expectations. And those are always the more enjoyable experiences, when you haven't had time to make an expectation of what you think it's going to be. So I'm aware of this, but I still can't find that. So I still don't find myself going, stop telling yourself how things are going to go and just live in the moment. If I have any kind of thing I've got to do, before I go and do it, I've already planned how it should be. And therefore, I'm always slightly annoyed that it hasn't gone to exactly how I've told myself it was going to go. But I'm aware of this, but it's just learning how to stop doing it.
Well, it's a starting point, though, isn't it?
It is a starting point. Did you see what I wrote? It's I wrote it above your testimonial on Facebook, and it's a quote from the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel thing. Have you ever seen that film?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, well, it's Judi Dench and Maggie Smith having a conversation, and there's a quote, and Judy, I think she's called Evelyn, she says something like, oh, I should look it up because I'll say it wrong. She says, things haven't turned out as I expected here, meaning in the hotel. And Maggie Smith says something like, I've written it down. Hold on, I don't want to mess it up. There we go. Most things don't turn out as expected, but sometimes what happens instead is the good stuff.
Mm.
And that's like, you know, I didn't I tell you about the rugby thing that I didn't want to go to a few weeks ago with Jim, and I built it all up to how I thought it was going to be, and nearly tried to almost picked a fight with him because I couldn't find stuff to wear. Do you remember? Didn't I tell you all about that?
No, I think.
Well, I mean, it was just a night out with Jim and watching rugby at with his friends and everything, and I built it up to that I didn't want to go based on a load of assumptions and the fact that I have been there a couple of times before, you know, just based on rubbish, really, on thoughts. And but it turned out nothing like I expected, and the good stuff did happen because in fact, if I hadn't gone, I probably wouldn't have done what I've done recently, which is join a choir and start singing lessons.
Wow.
I know. I know, and it's a bit way out, but it's absolutely true. I mean, because I met somebody and it was something I was thinking about, not the choir thing, because I'd never even heard of this rock choir, but yeah, if I hadn't have gone, I doubt if I'd be doing any of that at the moment.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just learning how to not be so, not micromanage, but just to appreciate things as they are, rather than, because even if like tomorrow I've got to go to the supermarket after work, I can't just go to the supermarket after work. I'll spend all day and in the car in my head planning how I'm going to the supermarket, what aisles I'll be going up, what things I'll be getting, and if there's something on the list that's not there, it's just straight away I suddenly, oh, that's ruined everything now because that's not how I planned this to go. I can't just do things and not have the forethought of how it's going to happen. Since I know something's planned, I've sort of gone, right, okay, I'm going to go at this time, I'll get there at this time, I'll go through this aisle first, and then I'll turn left and go through that aisle. So it's always got to have how it's going to happen. And I can't figure out how to not do that, to just go, I'm just going somewhere and I'm not going to think about it.
But I would argue, Jo, that you can, because you have that capacity within you. And remember was it the first conversation we had where you talked about how your school experience was, everything was so run by a schedule and a timetable, that for you it's very, very habitual to kind of run it all through in your mind, you know, and it's going to go like this, this, and this, and this. But
yeah,
if you start to notice that you're even doing that, that's the equivalent of catching yourself. Oh, I'm doing that planning ahead thing again, and actually I don't know how it's going to go.
And you talked about already, you've talked about several things that you've done differently because you've caught yourself. When you spoke about the drive home, when the warning came on, you spoke about the you know, going back to get water and being in a complete funk about being late to work and all those things. So it's not that you can't do it. It's just that this is a learning curve, okay? It's not, and you are already doing things differently. So you have, you know, that's your encouragement and kind of confirmation that you're not the person, you know, you've got this big label stuck on you, you know, control freak. You know, it's just, that's not who you are. That's just something that has become a habit. It's a habitual thinking pattern, but it's not who you are. And you can be like that sometimes. Okay, so it's like me saying, what's it like me saying? It's like me saying 4 years ago that I am an anxious person, that I am a depressive person. Okay, I don't say that anymore because I know it's not true and it's not who I am. But I do sometimes have anxious thoughts, and I do sometimes get depressed and get in a low mood. I'm a human being. And it's no different to you saying, okay, so sometimes I can be a bit controlling, but that's not who I am. That's not who you are. It's not your, it's not a character trait. You haven't inherited it, really. It's just a pattern of thinking.
It's a habit of thinking, like, and the longer we've had these habit of thinking, the stronger hold they've got on us. But you can choose to put it down. If you notice it, you can, like you did with in the surgery. It's like, well, is it going to help me? Am I going to feel better for kind of running all these plans about how it needs to be through my mind? What if it turns out better than I expected? What if I can actually, the what ifs can be the other way around, it's like, well, it could all work out fine without me planning the whole thing. How do I know it's not going to work out fine without me planning the whole thing? And that's where we, like, I know Sharon said it and other people sort of say, we have to play with these ideas in our own life for ourselves. We have to kind of check it out for ourselves. It's like, well, supposing I don't actually plan the entire supermarket trip and I do just turn up and find out how it goes if I do that. And if it goes really badly wrong, you can go back to the planning it all in your mind if you want to.
But the other thing is that,
sorry,
just sorry, I just want, before I forget, is, if you forget, it doesn't matter. If you don't notice it and you do find yourself, controlling and going through the same old pattern, and then it is, the worst thing to do really is to then beat yourself up about it, and be full of judgment, because that's not going to help either. You're just a human being doing the best you can, and something has been shown you. What I've been trying to do, not me, it's all of us, because this course, isn't me, it's you, it's all of us. It's like, it's like an exploration of understanding who we are and what we're made of, and what, really waking up to who we are and seeing that all the conditioning and all the labels and all the things, the rules that we think we needed, it's some things crash, some things come falling down, and you just go, shit, that, they do. But other things, it takes a bit of time, and you have to be really forgiving and be kind to yourself, because this is new. This is a new way of understanding the world. It's a new way of understanding how life works. And the kids at school, they tend to they grab it with both hands and see things so much quicker and so much more clearly, simply because they haven't been stuck in these thought storms and patterns of thinking for so long. But you can do any of these things that you've already been doing them.
The difference is, I think. Oh, go ahead, Jo.
Sorry?
I said, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think that it's helpful having the. I was going to sort of compare it to with the horses, but when you were teaching me with April, it wasn't so much that I was changing the situation at all. It was the fact that I was learning how to deal with the situation and having the tools to actually go, okay, I can deal with this. So it never, her behavior didn't change and my behavior didn't change fundamentally. It was the fact that when things did happen, you had the resources to go, I know what to do in this situation, or I can cope with this. So having, and that sort of equates to the same with this. So you can, I can feel myself going, no, I'm not going to go down that route, or getting angry is not going to make it any different, or stressing about it won't make the petrol last longer in my car. It's just, it is what it is. You kind of, it's having the tools to deal with it, rather than, it's never, I'm never going to stop having those thoughts. It's just knowing when I have them that I can let them just be and just cope with them.
Yeah. You know, they're like, again, the other story when I said about, you know, the taxis rolling up. If you think of them, those thoughts as a taxi, you know, that, or it's a taxi you don't need to get in. It's going in the wrong direction. It's going to the wrong destination, you know, so you can just kind of just wait at the taxi stand until another taxi comes along.
That's a good analogy. I haven't heard that one before.
Didn't I read you that? That's one of my favorites out of my metaphor book. I'll finish off with it before we finish.
From George Pransky.
Yeah.
Or maybe you did. Perhaps I've forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally going in the wrong direction. And you know, like she said, Jo, we don't always know or realize we're going in the direction, and sometimes it all goes tits up and sometimes it doesn't, and it just is what it is in any moment, whether it's having got in the taxi going in the wrong direction, not realizing it, or having got in the taxi going the wrong direction and then suddenly realizing it and going, oh wait a minute, I don't want to be in this taxi, or whether it's never getting in a taxi going in the wrong direction. And it's kind of, I was going to say earlier, the difference is when you haven't come across this understanding, you are getting in the taxi going in the wrong direction all the time, and you don't know that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so the only difference is now that you might occasionally realize, oh shit, I'm in the taxi going the wrong direction. Oh well, never mind, you know.
Yeah. And you can tap on the window and say, hey, stop, I'm going to go off.
I'm going to get out. Whereas before you'd have felt that you're obliged to continue on the journey.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have been going the wrong direction, going, shit, this doesn't look like the place I want to get to. So what's wrong? But not knowing that you're going in the wrong direction.
And also believing the labels.
Taxi driver's fault.
You know, it's a taxi driver's fault, yeah. Stupid bloody taxi driver. No, but believing the label, because, you know, when I used to think I was an anxious, you know, I was a worrier. I mean, I had the, you know, I use I haven't got any Post-it notes, stick them all over me. You know, I'm a stressed person. I was a worrier. I was, you know, loads of labels, and a lot of it I hid as well, but they were still, and other people then, because I thought it and said it and behaved that way, other people then behaved accordingly. So they reinforced my labels, you know. And if you believe, it's like if you believe you're an introvert and you don't like social gatherings, you go to a social gathering and you know, you don't join in, and you kind of stand on the edges and you don't speak to anyone because you think, you know, your mum's told you since you were 4 that you're shy. So you grow up believing that you're shy and you don't mix well with people. And then people think, oh, well, you know, that person's a bit of an introvert. They don't want to talk to me because, you know, he's always like that. He's a bit shy. Do you see what I mean? It just becomes a self-fulfilling thing. It's a thing. And it's total bullshit, because everyone can be an introvert sometimes and everyone can be an extrovert sometimes. And, you know, I can be shy sometimes and I can be not shy sometimes. They're behaviors, but they don't define you. you know, I am not, that is not who I am. And that is so, just made such a difference to me. Just because, have you ever done those personality things? I mean, they don't make any sense to me now. They used to. And now I'm just like, well, they're bullshit, because sometimes I'm like that and sometimes I'm like that. You know, I can be that and that. And they just don't make sense. But they used to, because
they reinforce our belief.
Because they reinforce things that I thought were true about me. So then I read it and it was like, oh yeah, I do that. Oh God, that must mean I'm a, you know, whatever. I can't think of anything.
NPR.
Yeah. And then just they're not true.
And then it's like, now how do I live my life as an EMPR or whatever it is? And what's the best job for me? And how should I deal with?
Yeah. And it's like,
we have free will in every moment to respond from that heart-centered space. If we realize it, and if we don't, we don't. Which is a lot of the time for me, but you know, that's why these conversations are helpful. That's why I like these conversations, because it's a reminder of a truth. For me, it's a reminder of a truth that most of the world isn't reminding me of. And if you speak to enough people that out there, they'll just say, oh yeah, you are like that, and they're like this, and this is how it is, and it's all set in stone, which is reinforcing that there's limited possibilities, whereas actually there's unlimited possibilities.
Yeah.
For anyone, over anything, in any given moment.
Yeah. And I hope, I mean, that's what I said. What did I say at the end of my audio? I didn't listen to it because I hate listening to I still don't like listening to them. Be curious, explore more, learn loads, and most of all, have fun. That's what I said. But that's what I want. This, you know, that's what I really want for you to see, that it's worth, that this is something that's worth continuing to kind of explore and have fun with. You know, it's not, I was going to say, it's not brain surgery, but it almost is. If you know what I mean.
It's the curiosity piece of that, I think, Sharon, isn't it? It's like staying open and staying curious. And sometimes I find curiosity difficult, but it's like a little wedge in your conditioned set of belief that sort of says, maybe there's an alternative, maybe there's another option here.
Yeah.
And you started to see it, and the more we start to see for ourselves that the set in stone truth is not set in stone, it's like, well, something else could be available.
Yeah. And that's the nugget of gold, really, that, you know, we don't have to live in a stressed out world. We really don't. And it's not about changing your circumstances or your situation or your partner or, you know, all those things.
About that.
well, maybe it is, but the thing is,
look, Mick got home. He brought me up a cup of tea. Look, he never brings me up a cup of tea. How cute is that? And when he did, I was almost going to say to him, "What's that for?"
But I think it is. I mean, I'll just tell you this. My daughter, you know, I went on holiday with her and Reed not long ago, and I hadn't spoken to her until this weekend, and since she came back, but I spoke to her over the weekend, and things were pretty good, you know, and everything was fine, and she's very busy, and her and Reed seem to be good, and blah blah blah. Anyway, I got a text from her 2 days later saying that they'd broken up.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, and I didn't expect it, because I'd spoken to her 2 days earlier and there was nothing particularly happened, you know, there didn't seem to be anything to sort of talk about then. So anyway, I got just a WhatsApp message at 5 o'clock in the morning, And so I was like, okay. But so I just sent her a, she was on about telling herself that she was going to be okay, and I just sent her a little few hearts and reminded her that she is okay, and and whatever. Anyway, I spoke to her then a couple of days later again, Wednesday, I think. And it was really interesting because Tash, I haven't coached her, obviously, but she's had a lot of books for her past birthdays and Christmases that she has read, and she's talked to me about them. And one of her favorites is quite an old book. It's called Somebody Should Have Told Us by another Pransky, actually, but not George, Jack. And she started talking about things that she'd read in the book. And she said what was really interesting is that they have broken up, but the way that it's happened has been really kind of calm, and they haven't had a fight, they haven't had a row. There's been things that obviously there are differences that they don't seem to be able to kind of get sorted, but they've actually managed to sit down and talk about it and come to a decision. And and she said it was really incredible because she could see the difference in realizing where her during the, because when it first when they first started talking about a breakup, she said she started to get upset. She said, and then I realized that the upset was coming from her. She didn't want to put it onto him. It was just where her feelings were coming from. And she said I tried not to do anything. Like, she didn't really fight them or the feelings. She just kind of let it come and let it go. And then she said they just kind of passed, and we sat and talked, and she said it just seemed to really kind of pan out in a really nice, amicable breakup, And I just felt, I don't know, just really pleased, I suppose, that I'd been able to, that I'd found what this conversation, this understanding, this whatever you want to call it, that this had been, that I'd stumbled across it, and that whatever I'd managed to kind of share with her, and that seemed to have really made a difference. And it does feel like a gift, doesn't it? I mean, not all the time. But I think
you just reminded me of life is a contact sport. So none of this is about saying that it doesn't mean that your life is going to go wonderfully well. What it means is that exactly what you just described, Sharon. When something difficult and challenging comes up, you might be able to navigate with more grace, more wisdom, and more resilience. And my sister's going through a whole horrendous health journey at the moment. She's just having started palliative care chemo, but these other things keep cropping up, and I just look at her and think, I see the resilience. Sort of something comes up, she's in A&E again, and this happens and that happens, and she keeps handling it, and she keeps handling it, and she keeps handling it, and she hasn't learned any of this stuff from me. Yes, she's done some meditation, that kind of thing, but it's like, I know that resilience that I see showing up in her is the resilience that's innate within her. That's nothing any different from her than anyone else, that we all have the capacity to handle the difficult things that come up, and we can handle them in any way we want, and we can handle them with great drama and aggravation if we want to. We're free to do that as well. But what I guess I start to see for myself is that energy wise and kind of feeling wise, if there's an option to take the quieter, more peaceful path, that looks more appealing than the one that's like hanging on by my nails kind of path.
Yeah.
If I see it,
Yeah. And I think, you know, I've spent so much of my life hanging on by my nails. I've used that expression,
Mm.
you know, or you know, feeling like I'm drowning and thrashing around, thinking, trying to find, change things, to find some peace, and you know, just and when I look back, I think I see the resilience in that too. Like I can see the health in the trauma, if you like, in all that. And I just, you know, part of me goes, God, I wish I knew some of this when I was younger. But then I think, you know, there's that other saying that what is it, when the student is ready the teacher will appear, kind of thing. So I just think, oh well, you know.
Well, you just said it though, didn't you? You just said what you've learned has in some way had an impact on your daughter. You might not ever have learned this, and who knows, it doesn't mean she wouldn't have had her own resilience and her own ability. But I know for me, what you're saying is true. What I think you're seeing anyway, Joe, is that if you've never had this conversation with anyone, you wouldn't even, it wouldn't occur. That's why the book's called Someone Should Have Told Me, isn't it? Because it's like it wouldn't occur to us of our own accord.
Quite well thumbed.
It's almost like someone has got to point it out to you, unless your family of birth is deep and wise and would point it out to you, because society doesn't point it out to us, because society is constantly reinforcing the message that we are at the mercy of all the things that happen to us on the outside. So as a child, how would it ever dawn on you to kind of go, well, they're all telling a pack of lies that they don't even know themselves, kind of, you know. Which I think is why you and I, Sharon, are both really kind of passionate about helping children to sort of be enabled to learn something new, because the world is full of adults who will reinforce the idea that you are a victim of your circumstances.
And it's I mean, it's actually, it's quite difficult though, because I mean, I'm working with a young girl at the moment who's I think she's waiting for a diagnosis of sort of autism or ADHD or something, I don't know, but she's a jewel. I think she's amazing. But I mean, the poor kid, literally her father has to check on her, on the school app, on her app, every single day to find out if she's got detention or not. And you know, and most days she has. And I was talking, I see her every Wednesday, and I was talking to him yesterday, and I said, you know, how are the school, are they kind of, you know, are they helpful at all? And he's like, no, they're a nightmare. They just basically chuck her into detention, you know, and there's no, that they're so fixed in their way of how things have to be, that, and she doesn't fit, you know. But you sit, and I've been sitting with her for an hour every week, and I mean, her wisdom and her, just the way she sees the world is so remarkable. I mean, you know, she's a great kid, and she's smart, you know, her intellect and her brain is brilliant. She's catching on to this stuff, she remembers stuff, she's just, you know, but she has a very kind of logical way actually of seeing, you know, when she talks about the things that she gets detention for, and her, when you hear her reality about how she sees it, it makes perfect sense. You know,
but no one in the school is stopped to ask or think or
and
consider.
you just, and I listen to her and I'm gobsmacked, because I'm just like, yeah, actually I'm with you on that, you know. It's really, it's incredible. But yeah, and I just think, oh, they're missing, you know, these the people that don't fit into the system are they're gifts as well, you know. They're the people we need, because that she has, that's where all the fresh thought and fresh ideas come from. And it just feels like our systems want to squish it and make everybody the same.
Or just to play devil's advocate, the problem with the schools it's not that they want conformity, it's you've got 300 children in a year and 8 teachers. You can't tailor it to 300 children individually because you would need 300 teachers. And you're never going to have a school that can tailor to each child individually unless they all have their own assigned teacher, because you're dealing with a mass of people. So they have no choice but to kind of make it streamlined or to make it accessible or work. It has to kind of have some parameters and some rules and regulations, and unfortunately they're not going to fit everybody. And it's not what I mean is it's not necessarily the schools. My sister's a teacher and she has 40 children in her class, and there's her and a teaching assistant. They can't tailor each lesson to each 40 children individually, so they have to do a collective lesson. Some children flourish, some children don't, and it's not that they're trying to stop that from happening. It's the fact that they're teaching 40 kids in one room. They can't do an individual lesson for each child.
I'm not arguing with you. I agree with you 100%. Okay. What I'm saying though is that the whole system, the way we believe we need to educate our children, it isn't working that well.
Yeah. And I would add, as someone who works in schools every day as well, there's something about and that come from the adults. So you can be working with a class of children and you can be a stressed out teacher that doesn't see the jewel in the child, or you can be working with 30 children and be incredibly busy but still see the jewel in the child. And I was on a call yesterday with someone sort of similarly talking as a doctor, sort of saying since she's come across this understanding, she started to see her patients just with more love and compassion as another vulnerable human being rather than a kind of an irritation on her list of people she's got to get through that day. And if everybody was just able to connect into that space, we would all just handle each other slightly differently. But the system doesn't support the adults working in it to come from a heart-centered space, because the system applies pressure from the outside that just stresses out the head teacher, that stresses out the teachers, that stresses out the TAs, that stresses out the children. And it's just this top down, and same in the NHS.
And all the institutions you can think of, actually, it's the same problem. And it's, I mean, you know, I'm sure I said couple of weeks ago, you know, I want to change the world. But
a few people at a time.
Yeah. I mean, there's an organization called One Solution. What's her name, Katie?
Mara Gleason.
Yeah. And I love their kind of values and mission. They're 3 principles, you know, they're talking from this place, if you like. And they're called One Solution because that's what they are saying, that there is a solution to almost everything with a different understanding. You know, and they do incredible work with in all sorts of areas, in corporate, in environmental, but it is the human system, the way we built everything up as human beings is all back to front. It's all the wrong way around. It's all outside in instead of inside out. All of it.
Yeah.
So it's a big, but you can only take care of yourself, actually.
I was about to say, and the place to start, and the only thing we can do is look to ourselves, and it ripples out from us, doesn't it?
And it ripples out. You know, like I've talked about, you know, the little changes that start to happen within you, make a difference. You've noticed it already you know, you told me the other day people have noticed things at work, and you know, my request, if you like, or my wish is that you do what I said, you know, what I said at the end of the audio, which is keep looking, keep being curious, because it does ripple out, you know. And it's not about going up to people and it's not having an I know something that you don't know, and I, you know, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Stop being evangelical.
No, it isn't. And it's not kind of, you know, you can't change other people, and you can't, but you can the best way of sharing this, the only way, actually, the only way to share this is to talk about things that you've seen for yourself. And then when you do that, if sometimes people, you'll say something or you'll notice something, and it'll just, it's like, you know, it just sparks something off in somebody else. It's not about going up to someone and saying, oh, you're a stress head, you really need to do this course. Well, you can try that and, you know, send them to me, but it doesn't really work very well. Do you know what I mean, though? But if you talk to someone about something you've seen or something you've done, and now you're seeing it differently, or doing something maybe a little bit differently, that will pique the curiosity in that person, because they'll go, you know, they kind of go, I want, maybe I could have some of that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a difference between, it's coming from a different place, isn't it?
You're not preaching it.
No.
Because everyone shuts down the minute you start trying to force or preach. And
yeah, it's not nice, is it, when you just, you know, you can't, it's not about that. I mean, that's how I got into this. Absolutely how I got into this. I saw a student of mine, Danny, wrote something on Facebook thanking a 3P practitioner. I didn't know she was a 3P practitioner, but she wrote this post thanking this person and this program that she'd done about anxiety. And I knew that she struggled with confidence and issues, because she's a horse, you know, somebody I worked with horses. So, but I didn't realize that it spread out into her whole life. And I hadn't seen her for several years, and I didn't know that she'd got to the point where she couldn't leave the house. She was having such bad panic attacks and agoraphobic and everything else. Anyway, she wrote this thing, and I hadn't spoken to her for probably 2 years, and she was just saying how her life had changed, and she would just, you know, wasn't suffering from anxiety and depression. And I was, at that point, I'd been ill, and I was, you know, and I was just going back down a rabbit hole that I'd been down before. And I read this and I was like, God, I wonder what she's talking about. And I messaged her and I asked her, and we had a conversation. She rang me up and we had a chat, catch up, and she, you know, and then she told me that she'd done this program. And I looked it up and I did the program, and here I am. But she wasn't, you know, she wasn't trying to sell it, or she was just sharing her own story. And that's how it's, you know, I think the implications of you just talking about that and sharing that is enough. I'm just going to go a shout out here and not make sure, because I don't mind if she's, and just see if Millie is actually there. Are you there, Millie?
I am. I'm just listening.
Oh, darling.
It's quite cozy in here, so I'm just chilling.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add, or are you just sitting there soaking it up?
I feel, for me, my dogs are really getting on my nerves. Go away. now. That actually, she's about to start barking, I think. That I have been in quite a like probably more for like the last about a year, maybe a year and a half. I've always been quite a worrier anyway. Like I worry about people's what people think of me and how they judge me and all the rest of it. And actually from doing this, because I've had quite a lot of loss in the last year and a half, that I couldn't control. And I think because I couldn't control it, it probably, not that it hit me harder, but it was harder for me to understand because I can control everything. You know, like how you were saying about feeding your horses and someone else doing it and then you going having to check. And I am exactly the same to like, you know, where they've put the water bucket. If they put the water bucket in the wrong place, then it's going to get full of hay, or they're going to knock it over, or then they're not going to have water. And all, and what it is really is it's all about, you know, my thing is you know, animal welfare, and I want that all of my animals to have the best. And the same with my niece and nephew. You know, someone was horrible to my niece at school, and I picked her up, and she's not a crier, and she was crying her heart out, and you know, I instantly was like, right, but I didn't do anything because obviously it's not my place to, and her parents have done it, but since doing the course, like, so I got myself into a little bit of a like a black hole, I suppose, where my brain and my overthinking and my thoughts of other people all the time had stopped me from actually doing anything productive that I wanted to do or that I needed to do for me, because I'd actually, any like spare time that I have, I would sit and then start thinking, and then when I started thinking, I'd start worrying, and then I'd create these scenarios in my head, and then before you know it, you're kind of an hour down the line and you've done nothing, but you're exhausted because of your what you've thought about. You know, your brain's been working the whole time. And it was probably, I think, probably week 3. I think it was week 3 when Sharon came over to do the horses, and I had, and it sounds really ridiculous, but I'd got one of the girls at daycare to come out and give me a hand because there was a job that I needed to do, but I needed some help, and I didn't have anyone to help me. And I had, basically, my garden benches have been out in the yard all winter so far, and all I needed to do was put them on the trailer and take them somewhere. And in the summer, I dropped 2 tubs of paint, which really pissed me off because they were 40 quid each, and they were everywhere, all over the floor. And I didn't know how to clean them up, and I'd put a load of wood shavings on top, and I hadn't cleaned them up until 3 weeks ago. And so all these little things that I hadn't done that I wanted to do, I've now realised that because I've changed my thought process, I suppose, on what I need to worry about and what I don't need to worry about, and how I deal with things, and how I think about other people's thoughts on me, and all of those things. The process is now, not that, you know, it's not done. I'm not saying it's done, but I've probably done the biggest start bit. And now I can kind of carry on because I've made a start, if that makes sense. And so I feel, to be honest, a lot better, a lot more relaxed, and I've let life just go with the flow, really. And because I used to be so relaxed, like everyone, you know, always used to be like, oh, you know, she's so chilled out, you don't want to worry about that. And then in the last few years, I've gone from this totally relaxed person to this massive controlling, no one can do anything but as good as I can, or the way that I would do it. And even to the point, like, I've let go of quite a big bit of my business in the last couple of years, because if I couldn't control it, I couldn't be involved in it at all. And actually, I've started to regain some control, because I shouldn't judge everyone by my standards, not my standards, but my thought processes and the way that I think it should be done. You know, I think it'll be quicker to do it this way. But if someone else has a good way of doing it, it doesn't mean that their way of doing it is wrong. And I shouldn't have to be cross or upset or whatever that they haven't done it how I would do it. If you get to the same result at the end of it, then why does it matter? Like, it doesn't matter, does it? So instead of coming in and being pissed off or upset or cross or anything, like, life's just easier if you don't take everything to heart, I suppose. You know, like, you have your own, if someone says something and they're in a foul mood, like, be like, oh, miserable bitch, and then just walk off, you know, like, you know, in your head, just be like, never mind. Whereas before, if someone had said something to me, my mum is a massive trigger. We clash like there is no tomorrow. And she said something the other day, and I walked out of her house and I was like, I said, do you know what? You're being hideous. I'm leaving, because she was. And I turned around and I walked out the house, and usually I would have got upset. And instead, I just walked down the path of like, bell end, stupid woman. And then I forgot about it. And 10 minutes later, she came down and we were chatting like nothing had ever happened, because there wasn't that reaction and the fire and the anger and the upset and everything, just because she was being difficult, because that's who she is. Like, it's not my problem. And so I suppose that's, yeah, how I have kind of seen it. If that makes sense.
It makes lots of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing is that you're beginning to see that you don't need to take things quite so personally.
Yeah, it's not, you know, everything's not always a personal attack. And but it doesn't matter. Like, a lot of things that I think matter, because I've told myself, I mean, I've been sleeping, which is amazing, and I don't sleep. I've not been a sleeper at all, but I've actually been going to bed and falling asleep and sleeping all the way through the night, because I would wake up at 4 o'clock every morning without even, no alarm clock, but I've been sleeping to 5:30 and my alarm waking me up, and I haven't done that for, I don't know, 10 years at least.
What, since we've been doing this course?
Yeah, because I haven't been going to bed and basically analysing everything every single person has said to me, or every single thing that has happened in a day. Because I haven't been analysing, I've just gone, and like in the evenings, I'm tired. I think my body's exhausted, but I think I'm just tired. And so I'm going to bed relaxed, because I'm not analysing stuff. And then just, you know, just being a bit more chilled out, because I can't control everything. I can't control anything, actually, really.
Can I just say, Sharon, that
I'm going to cry, actually. Can I?
The first call, I thought it was absolutely fascinating listening to you both, Joe and Millie, talk about your stuff. That sounded quite similar to me, about the need to control and the time and the effect of school. Tonight, you both sound like completely different people from the people that I listened to in that first week. I think it's mind blowing. It really is.
I actually think I speak slower as well. I'm like,
you both sound far more chilled.
My mind used to, well, it still does, don't get me wrong, like, you know, I'm not like all of a sudden this like massively chilled out, completely relaxed person, but you know, there's obviously been like a change, and like
That's
my
funny.
horses would never be in the field in this weather ever, but actually they're fine.
You know
They're
what, Millie?
happy.
I know that I've been with you sometimes when we've had, you know, when I've been helping you with the horses, and I have said to you, hey, just stop and take a breath. You
Yeah.
probably don't remember, but it is, I have sometimes said that.
Yeah, because I just don't, I can't, it comes out as quick as it's going around in my head, you know, and I just think, and I'm trying to persuade myself a lot of the time as well. So yeah, it's quite weird. I feel like our planning permission that we've been waiting for 9 months, probably longer than that now. I used to check that portal online 4 or 5 times a day. But if that's got click views, someone's going to be like, who the hell has been on this? Whereas like today, for instance, I haven't checked it because I forgot. Like I do check it still like once a week, but only because I didn't like because I want to know. And our planning consultant is so relaxed. But it's out of my control. I literally can't do anything about it. So it'll happen when it happens. I mean, if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be upset about it, but it happens when it happens, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the difference, isn't it? Because realizing you don't have control, like it sounds like you have been able to literally go and go, okay, let go of that one, let go of that one, let go of that one. And the more you've let go of those little bits, that the more relaxed you felt in yourself, and then you've been able to sleep, and it's incredible.
It's quite nice going to sleep now.
You know,
and I've got so much more done in the day. Like today I was in by 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I was like, right, what am I going to do? You know,
what is it you
like
think, how has that happened? What is it that you're doing differently then?
Like in a way, like I'm not that I don't care, but I kind of don't care about stuff as much. Like I'm not so like if something hasn't been done, I don't feel like I have to do it because it's still going to be there tomorrow. So obviously, like my basic, you know, getting water to animals. Like today, the first day ever, the cows have got no water. There's 30 cows that are thirsty, and my water bowser is frozen. And I got them water because I found a tap that wasn't frozen and all the rest of it. But before, I would have been on the phone to Dan, like, because he works away and it's been more stressful with him being working away. I've been like, oh, you're a bloody dickhead. Like, you know, this is all your fault because you work away and you've left me to do everything. And it's your fault, you know, that it was -12 last night and all the water's frozen. And now, but now, today, I was just like, oh, I just fill out some buckets. And to be honest, they were playing with the buckets, like you said. They were knocking them over, and I thought, you're a bunch of dicks, because when you're thirsty later on, it's all your fault. It's not my fault. And
that's exactly what my
guilty.
horses did this morning.
Yeah, and you can't feel guilty about it because you've given them water. Like it's not like you haven't consciously not given them water or anything like that. But you can't control the external things that happen. Like if they knock their waters over, then that's them being idiots.
And you'll do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'll do it again tomorrow because you know I wouldn't leave them without water. But if they haven't got water, like, you know, there's no point waking up in the middle of the night because I'm not going to drive over there and redo it anyway.
But isn't it interesting? I mean, what you're describing, or what I'm hearing, is, you know, it's interesting. We've got similar problems because Joe and I were talking about watering everything earlier, but that when you're not stressed up and caught up in all this, whose fault it is, and you've been left on your own, and you know, all that stuff that we go through, that slide I showed you, that there's room for clear, calm thought. you know, you just kind of, you know what to do. Common sense there's room for common sense.
Yeah. And
It's that
you know,
simple. It's so
and it gives
obvious.
you time.
Yeah.
It gives you time, like mental
Yeah.
time.
You get
Because
your
I am busy, but like
actually
I
that's
probably
what I was
spent
talking about in work-life balance, but we've never talked about that.
mm,
Never mind.
I don't feel like, obviously I haven't got any more time. There's no more time, but I'm using my time more wisely by not sitting on the sofa or having my cup of coffee and being like getting cross at people that don't know I'm cross at them, or being cross at myself because being cross at myself isn't making anything better anyway, rather than being like doing rather than worrying. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that bit. I love that being cross with myself doesn't make anything better anyway, because that's one I often miss.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. It doesn't help anything to be cross with other people necessarily, and it really doesn't help anything to be cross with yourself.
I remember I've had dreams before. I've woken up and I've been cross at Dan, and he'll be like, "What's that? Because you know, why are you miserable?" And I'm like, "Because I had a dream last night and this happened." And he was like, "Yeah, but I didn't do it." And I was like, "Yeah, but in my dream you did." And he's like, "You can't be cross at me if it's something that you've created in your own mind." Because I was such an overthinker in my sleep,
Yeah.
you know.
But
And
there's no
I sleep,
difference when you're asleep or awake. It's the
no,
same.
and I'm a sleepwalker and a sleep talker, and I haven't done that at all. I mean, I open windows and I feel claustrophobic, and like I am really claustrophobic. But I think it's because I feel better. I'm not so claustrophobic because I think in my mind and in my body I felt so trapped because I had no downtime.
Yeah.
Whereas now
You've got some space. You've got some,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I feel better. And I think that another realization was that, you know, you can't, when I think it was last week I said that, you know, I was expecting you to be like, right, so today here's your workbook and you're going to tick off these 3 things off your tick list. And then next week, you know, we'll tick off this tick list and then we'll be complete on, you know, this part, where it was more actually about like self-discovery, and you just gave the thought trends, I suppose, of, you know,
I wanted
like
to ask that because I wasn't here last week, but I just wanted to ask you in that moment. You said I feel better, and I wanted to say, and what did you do to feel better? Because it doesn't sound like you did anything.
no. And I think that's the thing, that you don't have to do anything. You
No.
know, people can, if someone beeps, I remember once upon a time years ago when I was relaxed, I don't like people being angry. Like, I hate it. I hate it if people are cross at me. You know, it upsets me because, you know, it's all from my childhood and all the rest of it. You know, I know where it all comes from. And someone beat their horn at me and I was in a foul mood. And rather than, and I've never beat my horn ever, because I just find it really offensive. And he pulled up alongside me and I turned around to him and I stuck my tongue out at him through the window. I literally just pulled a face at him and his face was mortified, but it made me feel so much better. So I thought, you're angry. I'm not. Like literally, like, just leave me alone. But it made me feel better in that moment. But then afterwards, I thought about it and I was like, oh God, what have I just done? Like, you know, why have I done that? Because now he's going to be like, there's this mad woman driving around that's sticking her tongue out at everyone that beeps at her. But sometimes, like, other people's actions aren't necessarily a reflection of you. So, you
No,
know,
it's them.
yeah, people are allowed to be and do whatever they like. Just don't take it personally. if someone aims it, because I would never stand up for myself. You know, if someone had a pop at me or got really cross at me, I'm not like quick-witted enough to turn around, and I'm not the kind of person to be feisty or, you know, bitey anyway. I'd just kind of disappear back down my hole and then bully myself about it afterwards. Whereas actually, I just think I think the biggest thing is just turning around and being like, oh well, whatever. Like, that's you, not me. And life goes on. And that was the end of it, you know?
It's inspirational, Sharon.
I'm sorry?
I said it's inspirational, Sharon.
It is. Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm just, and I'm not taking the credit for any of this because it isn't me, but I am feeling really happy that we've done this, you know.
It's inspirational to hear, to listen to the
sort of, completely
to the personal insights, to the personal learning, and to the
yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, everyone's going to like have their moments and relapse, and, you know, like, not like, you know, as it's like an illness or anything, but there's going to be probably weeks or days or something that you kind of like backtrack, or I personally will backtrack into like those thoughts. But it's just remembering, because it's all a learned behavior. Like, everything that I do is from experiences that I have experienced over, you know, all of the years, from different people, different influences, and all the rest of it. Like, I had a bit of a stressful day on Monday and I was cross, and then I just thought, well, whatever, bugger it, like, it's done, you know, Monday's done, let's take on Tuesday, you know, and then it's fine. But I do feel a lot more relaxed, and I don't feel so worried about things. I've been so my partner is quite into his shooting, and basically he works the dogs, and he always used to go off on a Saturday and do that, and because I don't see him very much, and then on that Saturday I, you know, do loads of jobs that I needed to catch up on. Whereas the last few weeks that he's been going, I've just gone with him and taken my brother's dog, and actually had a really nice day of just being relaxed, because I've allowed myself that time to just be like, you can have time off. It's not going to affect anything if you don't, you know, finish your tick list this week, because it's always growing anyway.
So Millie,
yeah,
I was going to ask you for a testimonial, but I'm not going to ask you now. I'm just going to ask your permission to look back over this recording and take little clips out.
Yeah, that's fine, because it's not my face.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But yeah, I do feel a lot better. But I don't know how I'm gonna, because I think the weekly phone, like, you know, these group calls are quite nice, because I like listening to people. So I like listening to other people, and then, you know, putting it into my own life, and, you know, my experiences and stuff, and, you know, thinking about other people's thinking and that kind of stuff. And so when it's like, now it's over, you know,
it's not the end.
I think no, it's not the end, but, you know, it's the end of this bit.
Yeah.
I
mean,
I'm sorry, Sharon, to butt in. I've got to pop out at 9:20, so I feel really mean leaving. It's all right.
No, I mean, what is the time? Oh gosh, 11 Yeah, no. So, well, I'm gonna round it up, because it's been amazing this evening. I don't know. I just feel kind of full up of something that feels really nice. Okay. So thank you for your participation and your sharing and showing up, you know, huge thank you. It's been incredible. I'm not the best marketing type person, so I haven't got a brilliant plan about what to do next, because and I'll be absolutely honest, I just wanted to see how this panned out. Okay. What I'm going to do is I am going to repeat this course. I'm going to change it a little bit, call it something slightly different. I'm going to repeat it in the new year, probably using most of the same material, seeing as I would be silly not to. But in terms of if you're interested in continuing something, all I need you to do is say yes or no. If you'd like me to think of putting something together, then maybe we could continue. I'd love to continue doing something. Okay. So
I'd like to carry on doing something.
Okay. Okay. So leave it with me. I mean, we'll keep in, we're friends anyway, so we'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
But let me have a think about what I can put together, and I'll come back to you. But I have a feeling that we've started something that is really useful. You know, I mean, what's brilliant is, you know, I'm learning as well. It's not like I'm not the expert here, or I've just kind of been, you know, I want you to come along kind of thing. It's like I'm being on a journey and trying to, you know, I'm driving a bus and I'm trying to get people to jump on this bus. Forget those bloody taxis, get on my bus. Okay. So, yeah. So I will, something will come to me to do, and I'll let you know what it is. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that's all good with me.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a little bit worried about what's happened to Mick, which is unusual because she hasn't been in touch, but I will find out. She hasn't sent me a message either, so something's cropped up, obviously, but I shall find out. So yeah, guys, so thank you very much, and it's nearly Christmas, and guess what, Joe and Millie, we've only got one more day of freezingness.
Oh, I know, but the rain's coming.
I know. I'm kind of looking
one or the other, isn't it?
I'm kind of looking for, it's going to be like 10, 11 degrees.
But that means mud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does mean we won't be lugging water around.
Yeah. There is
Just
that.
pushing wheelbarrows through 10 tons of mud.
Yeah, actually, I'm carrying. Okay, guys.
Thank you, Sharon.
Let you go.
You. Yeah.
And Katie, we need to chat about Saturday, actually, if we're going to hook up. Have you had any more thoughts? Or no, let me stop the recording anyway.